These are the questions you have on Iraq, according to Google's autocomplete. I'm going to try and give you the answers. This is the 101 Iraq. Who is Iraq's president? Well, that question might not be as important as you think. This guy, Fuad Mas'oum, is president and protector of the Constitution, but not much else. The power in Iraq today is really held by the Prime Minister and the military. And this is where things get interesting. So first, some basic background. Iraq is home to Sunnis, Shias, and Kurds. They also share power in the government. The president's usually a Kurdish, the prime minister Shia, and the parliamentary leader a Sunni. Now, here's where it gets tricky. The former prime minister Nouri al-Maliki was very pro-Iran. He invited Iranian fighters into Iraq, legalized Iranian militias, and gathered them under the banner of Hashd al-Shabi in order to fight armed Sunni insurgent groups and Daesh, aka ISIS. Things were a bit unbalanced. Now, the current Prime Minister, Haider al-Abadi, doesn't have such close ties with Iran, but Hashd al-Shabi is still operating in the country, and it's about as powerful as Iraq's own army. So there's a military arm of Iran legally operating in Iraq, something that would have been unimaginable before the US invasion. What Iraq looks like today? Well, it's not the picture on the ground which is the real story here. The US military left hundreds of tons of depleted uranium and other toxic waste throughout the country. And it's being linked to cancer, genetic mutations, and birth defects. In areas where the US military was heavily operating, cancer rates have doubled. Worst of all, the legacy of depleted uranium munitions can last for generations. And in Fallujah, a study found the highest rates of genetic damage in any population ever studied. Where is Iraq's oil going? After the US invasion, many people expected American companies to take the lion's share of the industry. But in 2009, when Iraq finally auctioned off control, management, and production of their oil fields, there were crickets from the US market. When the bidding started, there was just one US company at the table, Occidental Petroleum Corporation, who was quickly outbid.
يفوز ائتلاف شركة CNPC بتروناس وتوتال وبسعر $1.40.
Where was Exxon, you might be asking?
Making a deal with the Kurds who controlled the oil fields in northern Iraq.
When did the Iraq War start?
You may think it started with the US invasion in 2003.
But that's not quite right. It actually goes back to July 25th, 1990. Then President Saddam Hussein met with US Ambassador April Glaspie and pretty much said that he was gearing up to invade his neighbor Kuwait. Saddam actually asked the US ambassador, quote, "What is the US's opinion of this?" The US's response? "We have no opinion on your Arab conflicts." So Saddam invades. And immediately, the US changes its tune and backs a UN Security Council resolution to use military means if Iraq didn't pull out. Now, here's where things get ugly. Iraq's army agreed to pull out and was literally on the road back home when the US carpet-bombed the remote highway they were on, killing tens of thousands of retreating Iraqi soldiers.
Why Iraq War?
Well, if you're talking about the first Iraq War, some say Saddam had gotten too strong for the US's comfort zone, and so they let him believe that he was free to invade Kuwait to put him on the spot. And when he actually agreed to retreat with all of his forces intact, well, that just couldn't happen. From then, Iraq was put under harsh sanctions by both the US and Britain, and then invaded in 2003 by the US under the false guise of having weapons of mass destruction and links to 9/11.
How Iraq War created ISIS.
After invading, the US decided to disband the Iraqi army. That's right, overnight about 500,000 well-trained Iraqi soldiers were unemployed. Then the US did some things, like open fire on peaceful protesters in Fallujah, torturing and killing Iraqis in prisons like Abu Ghraib, and using violent private contractors like Blackwater, who have been accused of countless crimes against civilians. And really quickly, the US went from being seen as liberators to brutal invaders and occupiers. The last ingredient was the US's detention of tens of thousands of non-combatants, together with militants in places like Camp Bucca. The guy in charge, Commander James Schuyler Durand, later said, quote, "We created a pressure cooker for extremism." That's where Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of Daesh, also known as ISIS, was held and reportedly became radicalized. When he was released, he joined up with Abu Musab al-Zarqawi's al-Qaeda in Iraq and used the US's invasion and illegal occupation as a rallying cry. Then somehow, under the nose of the strongest military force on earth, the Islamic State in Iraq was formed. They swept through much of the Northwest, gaining control of key oil fields and much of Iraq's military equipment. They spilled into Syria and changed their name to the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, also known as ISIS. And the rest is history.